Good afternoon. It is not November the 19th. Don't believe that lie. It's December the 10th. We've spotted the obvious error already. And I'm Matthew Holt, the founder and publisher of the healthcare blog. It's THCB Gang, got a really fun lineup as we're getting towards the end of the year, even further on than November 19th today. On today, the lineup is correct, even if the date on the thing is wrong here. I have Kim Bellard, regular writer now at THCB, Grace Cordovano, board certified patient advocate, or as she said just now, frazzled homeschooling mum. Two of America's leading health futurists, Ian Morrison and Jeff Goldsmith, both of you should need no introduction, but health futurist, and Jeff's firm was Health Futures Inc. Ian obviously was at Institute for the Future when I was there. Jen Benz from Siegel Benz, employer health expert, and Raj Agarwal, I've got down here as unemployed layabout. We're going to have a bit of a reveal about that. But we're going to go live with the gang. Everyone's on here. We're streaming live, so enjoy this. Afternoon, everybody. So let's have a quick go round and see what people are interested in this week. And I'll get to you last, Raj, just because I'm going to be mean. But why don't we start with you, Grace? What do you notice this week, last couple of weeks?
Oh, so I'm kind of hesitating because I heard now there's two major futurists here. So I don't want you coming at me with
They don't know what's happening this week. They know what's happening in about 5 years' time.
Right.
Okay, so I'm kind of frustrated from the patient and care partner perspective because everyone's putting out their predictions and trends and forecasts for 2021, and they're so disconnected from the realities and unmet needs that patients want and need to improve care. I'm putting out my own piece from my perspective, but we have some work to do.
All right, Kim.
Well, I was pleased to hear some good news that there's now a thing called the Fauci effect, which is talking about all the people are applying to medical school because they're so impressed by what he's done in this whole pandemic thing. So there is some good that's come out of this.
Jen.
Vaccines. How are we going to get people to actually take them? Big topic in the conversation this week. Lots of conflicting surveys about who wants to take them, who doesn't, how it aligns with political preferences and so forth. Just fascinating topic in health behavior all around. And of course, employers are going to have a big role in perhaps convincing or mandating that people take them. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, and today there's actually the hearings, right, the FDA. I don't know if they made a decision yet, but the Brits and the Canadians got there first. Talking about Brits and Canadians, Ian.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, vaccine's huge. The one I've been tracking this week is, I talked to a CEO earlier this week, and ICU nurses, travelers are getting $225 an hour in California. So my wife, hasn't been an ICU nurse for 30 years, I called her off the golf course and she's working the shift at Stanford tonight.
Put her to work.
Yeah. No, but well-deserved 222, I have to say. But so,
Jeff, what do you notice the last week or two?
Well, I've been watching the Biden administration in formation. We have a new secretary designate in Javier Becerra from California, which I think is a brilliant appointment. We can talk about that a little later on. It's sent a shockwave through the hospital industry for reasons we can discuss, but also some surprisingly political appointments. Neera Tanden, a Hillary Care political operative, as OMB director, absolutely baffling. And Dennis McDonough, who is a very capable chief of staff for Barack Obama, just today being nominated for VA. So some fascinating stuff going on in Washington, a lot of professionalism, but a lot of unanswered questions as well.
Looks like they may be sending Mayor Pete to China. He has to learn another language, I guess. All right.
Okay.
All right. Raj, I had you down as unemployed layabout. Ian suggested I put down unemployed layabout and Arsenal fan, but I pointed out you could be these days be an Arsenal player and be an unemployed layabout. But right, but I'm going to refer in my intro to you this week to the famous incident, I think, which was in 1990 or 1991, when, as a political scientist, you should remember this, Boris Yeltsin stood up in the middle of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, ripped up his communist card and stormed off. And you've just done that to the healthcare establishment. So after a bunch of years working for big healthcare systems, you have a new, you made a change. So tell us a bit about what's happening to you. Oh, get off mute first.
Mute.
Get off mute, yes. Before I do that, look, Chrissy Farr and I planned this years in advance. That he was going to leave being a journalist and I was going to leave being a doctor, and we were just going to do this and both go in, fully into operational roles in the startup world. So that's what I'm doing next. And, kudos to Chrissy. And I texted her and said, first thing is like, you're in a mid-professional doing very well in a career and you go, I'm actually going to go and learn and do something different, right? And I think I have some value to add to that. And I think I've got a lot of learning to do on that as well. So kudos to Chrissy and many others that, are thinking about this. So that's exactly what I've done. I've hung up my scalpel. I've hung up my scrolls as a professor, right? And I am going to be working for digital health startup companies and looking at, the background for this is how can we leverage digital health to really impact thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of lives? And as a surgeon, I can impact a few hundred lives a year, right? And what I've realized at Jefferson in my role in ventures is we can impact many, many more through those technologies. So I've just signed up earlier this week. It was made public that I'm starting with a company called Panda Health as the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer. And the bottom line is this is an early stage seed funded company based in Atlanta. I'm going to stay in Philadelphia. And it's about how do we create a digital health marketplace for healthcare. There's so much out there in terms of the supply side, and all these health systems have digital transformation maps, journeys, all this kind of stuff. And how do they do that? And this is underpinned by a partnership with Vizient as well as a GPO. So it's really around being the GPO for digital health, but doing a lot more than that. I'm going to shut up now because I could go on, but I'm really excited and a little scared, actually.
I would like to point out that Chrissy Farr left the high-paid profession of journalism. You've left the low-paid profession of surgery to go, and she's going to work. She's gone to a venture capitalist who tend to, figure out how to make money out of the things that we go up and down. And you're in a startup, which can be a bit riskier. So we'll decide which one of you two made the wiser choice in a few years. Yeah. All right, fantastic. Well, it's been another great week, and I was actually Jeff. I wanted to start with you because I think your comment about the new HHS secretary, I was going to bring in about the fact that Rock Health is having its voting for the top 50 in digital health this week. And they had non-profit of the year. There was a choice between, I forget who the other one was, but there were two choices. And one of them was Sutter Health. And I was thinking, that's quite an interest, given what happened to them earlier this year and then what happened with the fine. So talk a bit about that and what the new HHS secretary is going to do. The fear of God he's putting into the system.
Who knows what he's going to do? I mean, he's obviously going to be heavily invested in the COVID response, which is going to, I think, blot out the sun for the next 6 to 9 months. But from a health system standpoint, Javier Becerra was the architect of the largest antitrust settlement in the history of the hospital industry, of $575 million in a lawsuit against Sutter Health for restraint of trade. There was a 114-page settlement last November. I read it. It basically accused Sutter of interfering with the ability of insurers and employers to select the health system that they wanted. And according to the settlement, jacked up the prices for healthcare by about 15%. So Sutter was forced to disgorge that 15% and was, placed under a whole series of business restrictions. They can no longer do all or nothing negotiation with health plans. They can no longer restrict health plans from doing value-based contracts or tiering or narrow networks that exclude Sutter hospitals. So it was a landmark decision in a whole bunch of ways. And if you apply that logic to the rest of the hospital industry, billions and billions of dollars worth of earnings disappear, and the landscape tilts decisively in the direction of insurers. So it'll be interesting to see how, at what point this administration pivots from COVID to market reform. Javier Becerra was, I think, a brilliant choice. He's a Stanford law grad, like my dad and grandpa. Go Cardinal. He's a substantive guy, 20 some odd years in Congress. He's got a lot of relationship capital with people on both sides of the aisle. He's going to get attacked during the confirmation hearings for his advocacy on behalf of the Affordable Care Act, but I think it was a really great appointment.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. I think, as you said, COVID is going to blow out the sun for a while. But on the other hand, there is a sort of separate COVID response team. It looks like I think Murtha is going to be a big part of that. And that's going to be happening. We have to talk about the impact of that. But under the hood there, you do have all these issues with insurers, hospitals. I mean, I've been keeping this little chart, and we talked about this last week about hospital reserves. And I think that if you added up all the reserves of the top 20 or 30 hospital systems, you're getting to an Apple-sized, cash mountain. At
least $100 billion.
At least, yeah, right. It's 20 in Ascension alone. That was revealed last week. So I mean, let's
Matthew,
go ahead.
I completely agree with what Jeff said, and I agree the observations about the appointment. A little bird told me watch 60 Minutes this weekend on this very topic. So
well,
that's a little sneak preview.
I can't believe we didn't get the exclusive here at THCB Gang, but we've done one today. That's the only one we're going to get. All right, fantastic. So I'd be interested in hearing, Jen, from you and from Kim about the impact of how you think employers are coming out of this, coming out of the recession. I would note that when we started this whole COVID recession in March, Airbnb laid off like thousands of people and was seemed to be circling the drain. And today they went public and their stock opened $100 above where it went, and they're now worth more than every other hotel chain on earth put together. So I'm never quite sure how this works out. But Kim, Jen, give me some sense about how you think the plan and employer side, you guys both are close to that, is going to start thinking about health and hospital systems and payments under the new administration.
Go ahead, Jen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, there's a lot to unpack there. So I don't know how much that anyone's been able to exactly figure out what the employer role is going to be. And if you look at what the American Benefits Council talks about, I'm a huge fan of Jim Klein, who runs up that organization, and he's been sharing over the last several weeks some of the different scenarios for what's going to go on with the new administration, and actually did a series of webinars with us at Siegel on that topic. And there's just a lot to unpack and anticipate in terms of the new administration. But I think for the moment, employers are just going to be completely consumed with COVID, kind of like we were just saying with the COVID response blocking out the sun. It's going to be all about that the next 6 to 9 months or year or so, and just figuring out how to get people back into offices safely, when it's safe to do that, how to be supporting folks that are working day to day in harm's way as essential workers. And then, of course, at the same time, how to keep putting pressure on the healthcare system so that employers can continue to afford to provide coverage in the first place. So there's a lot of pieces there. What do you think, Kim?
As with a lot of things, I think it's a very bimodal response. I mean, there are some employers, the Amazons, the Walmarts, that are doing very well. I mean, it's been good for their business. And then you have all these small, medium-sized businesses that are just trying to hold on with their fingertips. Right now we don't have a deal for more PPP loans. Unemployment is back up. So I don't, in 6 months, when people start to get vaccinated in bulk, there are a lot of employers aren't going to be there, and those jobs are going with them. So the bigs are going to survive pretty well, and the smalls are in big trouble. So this is not the top of their list. One thing that I'm very curious about is this liability relief thing that McConnell has made his top priority. It's not clear to me how many employers view that as one of their top priorities, and yet that's his top priority, as opposed to funding state and local governments, where it's clearly a priority for most states and most municipalities. So I'm not clear where that pressure is coming from, and I'd be curious on people's thoughts about why that's such an important thing for the Republicans.
Is it the nursing home industry?
It's got to be them or the meat packers.
100,000 people to COVID. Are they excluded from the protections or included?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be everyone's. I mean, I think it's got to be them or the meat packers is my sense, right? Because you've got the nursing homes, both for their staff. It's mostly for their staff, right? But
somebody must have a really incredible lobby, though, because I mean, this has been rock hard resistance on the leadership of the Republican Party, and I don't hear the employers, getting vocal about this and demanding it. So where is it coming from? Who's paying for this defiance?
It may be luxury hotel and golf course owners who are worried about their
Cruise ship
future
owner,
liability.
Carnival
just
Cruise
saying,
Lines.
Yeah.
well, there's one particular luxury hotel and Carnival and golf course owner who may not have any money to pay and probably can't afford, probably hasn't paid his insurance premiums for a while either. So I'm not sure that it's that targeted, but yeah, but it might. I mean, we'll see. But I mean, there's going to be. I think there's going to be increasing pressure on the new administration to have a, look at what the hell went wrong. There's also going to be a lot of pressure from individual states to go after individual parts of the Trump administration for various things that they clearly have done wrong. And the New York Attorney General was talking about that the other day. So I think it's going to get very interesting and messy. Meanwhile, yeah, as you said, we've got to figure out the vaccine rollout, and they're doing. I was listening to NPR the other day. They're doing trials in Colorado of like moving fake trays of dry ice from the airport in Denver up to Vail and to sort of small hospitals up in the mountains to make sure that they can get it all right. And in the UK, they've already started doing the vaccination, and they've already had some people getting some strange reactions.
I fear there are going to be a lot of disasters with the distribution of the vaccines because it's been pushed down to the states, and they're going to push it down, and they are not ready for prime time on some of this, and there's not the money to do it right. So. Biden said there's not really a plan about how it gets from the manufacturing into somebody's arm. And, Azar says there is, but I tend to believe on Biden on this. The further you push it down, the lack of clarity there is about what's supposed to happen to who, when, how.
Well, I mean,
and then that reveals all of the gaps in our public health system too, in terms of getting it to the people who need it the most. Sorry, Ian.
No. I was just going to say, I mean, I'm on the Martin Luther King Hospital board, and we had a board meeting yesterday. We're talking a lot about the vaccination rollout. We have 460 doses on the way. We have 2,000 employees, so you do that math.
It'll be a raffle?
well, no, but that conversation is going on, I think, everywhere in terms of allocating, and it's very complex. I mean, we have other board members who are running big institutions, and both Kaiser, Stanford, parts of Stanford, and the conversation was around not only do you want to get it to frontline workers and clinicians as fast as possible, but you don't want to do it all at once so that a whole service goes down if they get so the rollout of this, even that's within a hospital that is oriented to healthcare. If you imagine what it's like for Disney to try and figure this stuff out, I mean, Jen, you're going to be busier than hell trying to deal with this because it's immensely complicated, the intersection of testing, masking, and vaccination. And then, we're still going to have to wear masks. I'm sorry, unless I'm missing something, I defer to the science people here. But I was just talking to a doctor friend of mine this morning. She was saying that, yeah, just because you're safe doesn't mean you can't be a super spreader. So we're not doing karaoke again in a hurry, I think.
I find it's really anxiety inducing because here I'm hearing from colleagues in medicine too, that everyone's going through these processes of trying to get a structure in place. And this is in a place that has a budget and administration and structure and legal compliance. What is everybody else supposed to do? So I'm thinking of just the regular individuals. What about vulnerable populations? What about rural populations? How much do they even know about the vaccine, and who's pushing the credible content and building trust? And so I'm interacting even just with our local school board that we need to be proactive in pushing more information to the local community about the vaccines, that they're addressing disinformation and misinformation that's in the community, that there are side effects. There was a really great tweet by a physician, and he said, would you take a drug that has all of these side effects? And underneath he wrote, this is the placebo arm of the trial, listing all of the side effects. And I thought it was so eloquent and so powerful. And these are conversations we should be having because there is data out there, but we're not relaying it. Disinformation is running rampant.
I'm troubled that, 2 days into the rollout, we're already finding that there are allergic reactions. Like, well, how did that not come up in the trials? I mean, that seems like a common thing that would have come up, and we're finding out now, and among healthcare workers, to Ian's point, you roll it out to all the healthcare workers in America and they all get allergic reactions. I mean, you're going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the case, right? Sorry, Raj.
Sorry, Matt. I get it that we're talking about when you have the vaccine, whether it's in your hospital, or whether it's in, a community in Vale or somewhere else, right? But we're not talking enough about how do you actually get the vaccine out there? What's the supply chain piece? And I know it's very emotional to talk about the 460 doses and the 2,200 employees and that stuff, right? That's real. I'm not trying to poo-poo that. But even before we get there, how are we getting these doses out? I mean, there was a video on CNN about, Philadelphia airport has this cold room and this is where they're going to be stocked. And, Matthew, you mentioned about them doing this kind of fake transfer. We need to figure that out. And I don't feel there's enough conversation going on about actually the supply chain piece of this, right? And then on top of that, like, who's actually going to get it? Because we can have all these conversations about who's going to get it, but if no one's going to get the vaccine because it's not there, then these are kind of dumb conversations to be having, right? Sorry to be so blunt, but I'd love to hear from others about what do we think we're going to do about actually, we're not good with supply chain, right? We saw that with PPE, right? Well, that very badly with PPE, right, in our healthcare system. So how are we going to get this vaccine out to 330 million people? And twice. They need to have 2 shots.
And I'll let other people talk about supply chain because that's certainly beyond my area of expertise. But what you notice now is people are really, really, really impatient with waiting for solutions. And it's really hard to get people to just keep with the basics of wearing a mask and social distancing. And we have this huge vacuum of health information and consistent health information so to Grace's point of getting information out into the community about the safety of the vaccine and the patients around it is a big, big issue because I fear that we're kind of leading people on a bit in terms of how fast this is going to happen. And that's just going to create more frustration and more anger. And people are just going to say, forget it. I'm done with this whole social distancing thing and someone else can figure this out.
Yeah, I just point out, I gave a talk to so this week I should be in Japan eating sushi, drinking whiskey, having fun with my concern, and I'm here instead so I had to go in. I went into the conference, which I've been working on there for 5 years. Changed its name to the Health Tech Sun now, but it's no longer the Health Tool in Japan, but same team. And was complaining about that. But I talked to them a bit about it, and I went and looked at the numbers for Japan. So we currently, and so Japan has got we got 3 times Japan's, little under 3 times Japan's population. Japan has had less than 2,500 deaths.
Right.
We had 3,000 yesterday, right? And we're on, and that's a lagging indicator. And we have 100,000 people in hospital. And this is going to go for a while. Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew, it's really interesting when you look. I mean, they have some advantages. Advantage number 1 is it's an island. So, and it also has a handful of large airports, not 50 or 200. So when Wuhan blew up, they shut down air travel from China, and they did it really early. So they kind of nipped this in the bud. I think the other thing Japan has going for it is it is a culture of deference and respect for authority, which is in very short supply in the West, not just here.
Hang on, you live in a state where it's all fine now, right? Virginia's a blue
sure.
state.
But even there, the cases are beginning to tip upward. You can do all the stuff right at the front end and still get nailed at the back.
It's broader than Japan, though. I mean, I don't remember all the countries, but if you look at, I think it was, China, Vietnam, Thailand,
South Korea, Taiwan.
Yeah. So there's something about Southeast Asia where it's not.
Well, I mean, you could argue that, but Melbourne shut down, got rid of it. They're basically okay. New Zealand's done a tremendous. Now there are relatively isolated places. The US is much harder, but it's clear that Britain's an island that's done a terrible job.
Well, and we had people pouring in, not direct flights from Wuhan to the United States, and direct flights from major European capitals that had already been affected. People were pouring into this country. We had millions of cases by the middle or end of February we were screwed then.
Right.
So, I mean, the premium was in acting early and aggressively. That was the key to New Zealand. New Zealand shut down the air traffic and basically shut down the country and snuffed it. So, I mean, we're going to learn something about this. I hope this is going to happen again. Maybe we begin looking more at mobility in airports and people moving around and have our contact tracing thing together enough so that we can nail the people that, you know, at the front end of it. Because once those million cases were in place, I mean, we were goners.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Jeff.
Also,
oh, sorry.
Ian, then Jen.
go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that just to build on that, yeah, we allowed people in. They were all Americans, right? But they were bringing, you know, I mean, and then they were off to the races. You know, I have a niece who lives in Hong Kong, had a baby, came to Canada, went back to Hong Kong all through this last 6 months. And you wouldn't believe the hoops you have to go through to get in and out. And you know, basically wear anklet bracelets monitoring your every move. We didn't do any of that here. I mean, it's like mobility central, and folk bopping around. I mean, I talked to my British friends, haven't been in London. They live a 30-minute train ride away, haven't been in central London in 9 months. And even there, they've still had trouble with it. So we just have not, as Jeff said, stepped up to the restrictions. You know, we're not South Korean, you know.
You know,
Well,
to me, the real central missing ingredient is a respect for authority and a respect for the rights of others. I mean, you can't manufacture that. It's either there in the culture or it isn't. And what I think we've discovered here is there is a very powerful strain of you are not the boss of me, libertarianism in this country. And, you know, you can blame Trump all you want, but a whole lot of other countries screwed this up too. And I think even if Barack Obama had been president, I think, you know, they maybe would have moved earlier, but then they probably would have gotten the messaging wrong because they wouldn't have understood that there's a whole bunch of folks out there that don't care about the science. They don't care about their fellow Americans. They're like, I want to go to the gym. I want to go to the bar.
Yeah, there is also, I mean, I think one thing with the US is there was such a state by state response. And so you had such different messages. So whether or not people respected authority, there was no consistent message from authority. There was no consistent, you know, no consistency in terms of what folks should do. But also remember some of the forces behind the scenes that were putting up and putting money behind the anti-masker type demonstrations and so forth. It's not just the American public that comes up with these ideas. There's lots of wealthy donors that you know, that want to keep things fragmented, and there was a ton of money pouring into those to get people to protest in the Michigan Capitol and things like that. So there's a lot of factors that are unique American insanity, I think.
Yeah, the other thing I want to jump in on, there was a paper, I don't know if folks saw it, from Rochelle Walensky was one of the authors, who's now going to lead the CDC from Harvard. And it was around vaccine impact with other factors, right? So what the paper, I thought it was really, really well done in Health Affairs. And what it said is, look, you can have a highly effective vaccine, but if your degree of transmission is so high, that vaccine is not going to be able to keep up, and you're still going to have deaths, and you're still going to have, you know, people getting COVID. And actually, if we have a much lower rate of transmission, you don't need a 95% effective vaccine. You could have a 50% effective vaccine, which is even more effective. And I think that message, just going back to the messaging, is not coming across. People are like, oh, the vaccine's here. Oh, I'll just get my shot and then go to the bar, right? Or I'll go to a nightclub, right? And I've not heard anything saying, actually, no, this vaccine is going to work on top of all of these other factors, the social distancing, the masking, the contact tracing. I don't hear that. And that's scary, because we might have this amazing vaccine and we might be in an even worse place when everyone's vaccinated, even though the vaccine is so good, because we are not adhering to all the other factors.
Yeah, I think that's a key point. I mean, some people have used the kind of Swiss cheese model, you know, from patient safety, of saying you've got to use that sequenced set of actions. But I mean, I think just on the vaccine alone, Raj, you point to the immediate problem of supply chain. The next phase is really the scarcity phase of priority setting that we've sort of alluded to. But then we'll get into a kind of abundance of vaccine supply and all the vaccine hesitancy stuff. You know, I mean, particularly in communities of color who are dead set, a lot of them, against using this. And then we get to the phase you're just talking about, which is everyone thinks we're home free and it's party central again. And again, vigilance is going to be required.
Yeah,
This
I
is
just got to make a quick remark about California's coming in, because I'm actually, you know, I have my own personal activities this weekend, right? I'm supposed to be going skiing. The team my kids are on just got closed down for lack of snow, actually, but they're likely to be closed down. But so where do you go skiing in California? You go to Lake Tahoe. What's on the border with Lake Tahoe? Actually, in Lake Tahoe as well as Nevada. So California has decided for that county that's bordering it that it has to close down. There's no visitors. There's no restaurants. There's no nothing. No outdoor restaurants. There's no nothing. And it's, by the way, this is coming up to their busiest time of the year, so it's going to really screw that region economically. In the same place, right, immediately across the border in South Lake Tahoe, the casinos are still open. You know, they're still at 25% capacity, and you know, it's no one's stopping them. And it's back to the problem is you can say that California did a good job closing down in March and earlier, but people are coming into California from all over the place. California's, you know, you're not an island, so it doesn't matter if the rest of the country, if Nevada's not bothering, and you know, it's all open. It seems to me that we are going to be. I mean, you can argue what you like about the messaging, but we're going to be stuck in this high hospitalization, high level of ICU use, you know, and high number of deaths caused by what happened before Thanksgiving, now the Christmas holidays. Is going to keep going, and we're going to be, and whether the vaccine starts to take a big effect or not, starting in, you know, February, March, April through the next few months, nothing's going to change. Grace, you want to come in?
Somebody asked, why didn't we have an Operation Warp Speed for testing? You know, if we had a quick, immediate test thing, we might not be anywhere near the situation we're in now. But as Americans, we always like the magic cure instead of, you know, like doing the groundwork right.
Grace?
Did anyone see the fact how we're going to be tracking who got a vaccine?
Great question.
Because I saw paper cards and I almost just didn't make it through the rest of my day. So can you imagine a dual dose vaccine, and you're going to get a little nice, cute little paper card that you're going to carry with you? Are we serious right now? How is that going to work? Why? Please tell me that I misunderstood that point.
So this is an area where Roger's new job is going to fix us.
Well, when I had my flu shot like a month ago, yeah, I got a little green card.
All right.
Here you go.
So,
you've had your flu shot. That was it.
I got a Band-Aid. I got a cute red Band-Aid. And I know it went through the system.
Don't joke. It's going to be green cards. It might be pink cards or it might be blue cards, but it's going to be
bad.
And yet they want to report to HHS all this personal information. So like we get the worst of all worlds. It's on paper for the medical stuff, but the personal
Digitized for the government.
Central federal body that no one is trusts.
well, so let me. I will tell you about one thing that's going right. So there's a company which used to do, which started the Health Debate years ago with a very funny story about doing STD transmission, because it's called Healthvana, and they are the people who are doing the reporting, the immediate reporting in LA. So if you look at Los Angeles, there's a massive lineup of cars outside Dodger Stadium for the testing. And the reporting of that testing comes on your phone, and they are the first delivery of that information. So they figured out with LA County, and I think they're doing it with Miami School District, Miami-Dade as well. They're not, but we need it. There are some other places. I heard about one in Philadelphia. I don't know the name of the company did the same, was doing the same thing. You might know, Raj. But there is the ability to use the, you know, what is the most ubiquitous device in America? It's the smartphone, right? There's the ability to get a text and then have that on your phone and have the information you texted this person and what the result was. So I think we've got to go to that. The cards are going to be disaster.
It's a good point you made, Matthew, because in China, the phone was the key to controlling people's movement. Everyone in China uses their phones to pay for stuff. So they simply glommed on to Alipay and created a QR code system, a color-coded system using the QR codes in Alipay to track people and to give them clearance. And it's going to be very simple to determine in China who has who's been vaccinated and who hasn't, because it's right there on the phone.
But I think the challenge here is this at an individual level or societal level or both. Like there are COVID tracking apps. There's one in Pennsylvania. There's one in the state of New York. There's probably others that I don't know about, right? And how many people have actually signed up to those, which can then pre-warn you that you've been in the vicinity of someone who's had COVID, because, oh no, that means now I'm being tracked.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, there's been a lot. So actually,
I mean, we have, this is ours.
sponsored a,
We
Sorry,
have
Jeff, let
one
me
in
just say this.
Virginia. I can't get it to show you, but I just downloaded it this morning. So we actually have a COVID tracking system in Virginia, but it's voluntary. And
But
so
how many people are using it is the question.
That's a
I don't
great
know what the
question.
percentage is.
I think
there's
that's
this,
early
rumor out
adopter.
that Bill Gates wants the vaccine so he can implant microchips into people.
That's it.
So I
Your
have one
conspiracy
of these
theories.
on my phone. I have COVID Alert NJ. I've been using it for quite some time. And today it says there's been 24,500 check-ins today. That's
well, there's only about 25,000 people in New Jersey, so that's fine, right? So
But Jen,
I would,
I wanna ask Jen
do want
on
to say one thing, which is that we had this, you guys go look at this. The RW and the Robert Johnson Foundation sponsored a challenge that Catalyst Alternative, my organization, ran. And we had a bunch of people, a lot of entries of different things for emergency management. And actually, one of the, when it says something called the Path Check Foundation, which didn't win, became second or third, I think, in one of the categories. And they've built out, and they've done it for Louisiana and a couple of other states. They've built out a sort of tracking thing, and they've built the bit in the middle, which is which allows the public health people to respond back to the people who were taking the test and may have had symptoms, but also has like a sort of privacy mashing thing in the middle. So it's semi-voluntary. It's a incredibly complex solution compared to what the Chinese doing, where we know who you are and we're going to tell you about it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe with that kind of thing, next time we can get people on board. But it's just too late for most of the country.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't. We're at 10% now positivity rate in California. It's like in some of the Dakotas and elsewhere, it's about 50%. I mean, it's just too late.
But Matthew, I was going to ask Jen. I mean, are you seeing from your big self-insured clients talk about immunity passports and messaging that kind of solution to navigate through a return to work? Because presumably it's all going to fall back on the big guys who, I mean, I'm thinking about Disney as a classic example. I mean, they're completely screwed until they can find a way to solve this in terms of their theme park business.
Yeah, well, I think similar to what Kim said, there's just a very bifurcated approach. There are businesses that have been operating and having people at the workplace this entire time, and they've just been figuring it out as they go, like the grocery stores or the lab facilities, warehouses, all the things that are kind of keeping things running in the meantime. So they're kind of figuring out as they go, trying to do whatever they can to keep people safe. And then I think for a lot of employers that have people at home and have the luxury of not needing to figure this out along the way, they're going to just wait and see and wait and wait and wait and wait. And so I think that you're going to see the working from home extended more and more and more, because it's just really expensive and it's really complicated to track people, see who's vaccinated, and it's a legal minefield too that most employers are not equipped to solve for. And then, there are going to be some really interesting innovations that come out from the companies like Disney, who has very leading health practices, where they kind of figure out new ways to do this. And they might figure out something that actually should be applied to the broader population. But it's going to be all these different approaches exploding at one time.
I saw that some of the ticketing companies are coming up with a QR code to show that you got a vaccine passport so you can come into the concert. But I'm wondering, where are they going to get the data? I mean, are you going to rely on people to voluntarily swear they did? The same people that swear that they're socially distancing. So,
yeah, no, and that's the level of trust with the individuals. Like, do you actually trust that people aren't making up those QR codes or figuring out a way to hack the system? So there's just so much that there's going to be to unpack.
Immunity codes are going to be the fake ID of 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been
a COVID vaccine, or do you go now all vaccines that are available? Where do you draw the line there? Are we saying, okay, COVID vaccine, but not other vaccines?
Well, I mean, you've got I mean, you've already got this. I mean, I live in Marin County, which is semi-anti and intellectual, hippie liberal, anti-vax central to some extent. And there's a whole bunch. There's actually a list published by the Education Department of schools. It's all the little charter schools which have vaccination rates of regular measles stuff at like 25%. But if you want to go to they trust the law in California now. If you want to go to you want your kid to go to a regular public school, they've got to have had this, and they can't now have an exemption based on sort of moral values or whatever. It's got to be that you actually have cancer. But having said that, it's just, we're not talking about going to one place and being admitted, one-time thing where you have to show up where you have to find the papers and get a vaccination record once. This is all the time, everywhere. I have had a couple of people emailing me. I haven't really looked into it about using some of the stuff around, again, the sort of privacy in the middle version, but where they can actually figure out who you are. And there's a lot of ways that we can figure out who people are using cell phone data and using credit card data and different ways of doing identification without having a social security number. There's a lot of advances in that over the years, and the NSA started with it, but others have done. But about there's a company I know which is talking to Live Nation about this, which is the biggest concert venue. They're talking to a bunch of the sports teams about this. Those are the places where we want to go back, right? We want to go to bars, we want to go to concerts, we want to go to sports events, and where there are going to be a ton of people and where it could be really disastrous if this doesn't work. And they're the ones who depend on it for revenue. So, that is, if, as you say, and that's the Disneys. That's the way you've got if you group together. And they were also, by the way, some of the last people to shut down, right? Because I remember, Grace, you and I were talking about this when HIMSS was, figuring out whether it should go or not go in early March, with 40,000 people showing up together in Orlando. In the end, at the last minute, they cancelled it. But the Orlando theme park for Disney and Universal didn't close down for ages later. And I was going, well, what's the point in like one group of 40,000 not coming when you've got 100,000 people a day or whatever it is going to those theme parks with how many thousands of workers they have? So it does seem to me that we'll get some solutions there. There's going to be a lot of Swiss cheese in it. And the way I see it, I mean, we've had no activity at all from the quote unquote COVID response task force that Mike Pence has allegedly been leading the last few months. Obviously, that's going to change on January the 20th or January the 21st. But given the situation they've been given, I can't see us having any other hope than getting this vaccine to really be effective and work. And then, let's hope that enough people keep the social distancing, the masking going while the vaccine is spreading out. But I think if it doesn't get us to pretty good herd immunity and drop the rates dramatically within a few months of it being rolled out, I can't see America keeping this together for all the reasons Jeff was talking about.
So Grace, question in the chat about when do we feel that, even with the vaccine and everything, is the best case for us to get back to, bars and sports and all that. Let me just give you some reflection. A very dear friend of mine is Dean at the Australian National University Medical School in Canberra, right? And in Australia, I spoke to him on the weekend. I said, how are things? He goes, yeah, it feels pretty normal. I don't know if you've seen the photographs. There was some trending on social media yesterday. People are out, people are doing stuff and whatever. I said, so, and his family's actually in Singapore. I said, so when are you going to see them and when are you going to be able to travel? He goes, we're not going to travel for 2021. Australia is just going to be Australia. There's a bubble going to be with New Zealand, and then there's potentially going to be a bubble with Singapore and maybe one or two other places. So very depressing, Grace. But right now, Australia, where it's at right now, is saying, yeah, we're going to be like this for at least another year, right? And that's where they are today. So where does that?
There's 100,000 people waiting to get back to Australia, I think, and with very limited flights per day. I saw something along those lines.
I didn't know about that, but I was trying to reflect to where we are in the US today. If Australia is going to take another year at least before it's going to be back globally,
that was essentially what Anthony Fauci said today. He said it's basically going to be the fourth quarter of 21 before we end up getting back to normal, and that assumes we've solved the problems of actually getting the stuff we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, getting the vaccine out, verifying that people have taken it, and all the rest of that stuff. We've just got a ton of work to do.
but that's Australia getting back to normal just as Australia. And I think the worry is, and I think Matthew's saying this as well, is we're going to expedite that. We're not going to say, okay, we can just live in America and not, travel around the world and do all this stuff. We're just going to be like, oh, well, America's great. Like, let's just open everything up now. And we're just not going to ever get there. It's quite frankly.
We also have we have two things which we haven't mentioned, but are worth talking about. I hate to tell you this, but there's another election coming up that matters a bit in early January. 2 seats in Georgia, right? And there's all this ridiculous theater. I mean, we haven't got into this about the Republican Party suing, Trump and God knows who, crazy people suing everyone, suing and losing in every court everywhere about this. But also, you have a real issue about who takes the Senate. And wind the clock forward, right? If we're now end of 21, start of 22, there's another election cycle coming up, not much longer after that. And, you can imagine people are grumpy enough now about this. I mean, and now we have a Democratic administration, the previous administration, the current, administration couldn't be blamed for, locking people down because they're encouraging the opposite. If we have an administration that believes in science and masking and keeping people under control and keeping it slow and making sure the whole thing works through the vaccination program and the economy, gets back going slowly that way, I can see a lot of negative reaction to that as well. Just, and we're not that far away.
Well,
And there's going to be a lot of people getting primaried on the right in the Republican Party. So even people we think are conservative today are going to be challenged by people who are way off the charts.
And look, how small the percentage was that Biden won by. I know he won by a lot of votes, but it wasn't like a 60-40 win.
Well, that wasn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that Biden had no coattails whatsoever. The Democrats are hanging by a thread in the House. And the Republicans retain control over state legislatures that will be determining the apportionment of votes and the configuration of districts for the 2022 election. And I think part of the reason why you're seeing the Republicans pulling back on COVID relief and on stimulus is that they don't want to make it easier for Biden. And that redistricting that's going to take place after the 2020 election by itself will tip the House to the Republicans in 2022. So it is entirely possible that Joe Biden is facing a unified Republican Congress at the end of those 2022 elections.
It's Trumpistan 2024. Oh my God, I need to get in the bus.
Well, there's lots of room in Scotland. Lots of room.
That's right.
Start your application for Australia.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the only person who's in good shape, I believe, is Raj, because I understand New Zealand is still recruiting doctors, even in the middle of this. There have been American doctors moving in. So the rest of you can all head back to medical school quickly. But Raj, you can, if the startup thing doesn't have a go in the first few months, you can.
I'm about to say, yes. You're not giving much confidence in me figuring out this startup thing, are you?
Yeah. I have faith, Raj.
And now, run while you still can.
You can do it remotely from Christchurch.
Right. You can work from the South Island. Go skiing in the afternoon.
Oh yeah, sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to echo Jeff's point. I mean, it hasn't been discussed enough about what a disaster the election was for the Dems other than Biden. And you look at the Secretary of State in Georgia and some of these other people that have stood up and actually done their jobs. They may not be there in 2022 or 2024, and that's right. That is totally frightening.
Yeah. Politics is not getting any less strange by this, and and the thing, we're seeing some strange stuff going on elsewhere. I mean, go back to being in Mine's home country of the United Kingdom. It's is trying to figure out the COVID recession, the Brexit recession happening at the same time. They're having to specially guard their vaccine came in from France. It's made in France, and they had to like specially guard it and get it through the ports, the Channel Tunnel, because they're starting to hit Brexit chaos. You've got Macron will be there for a while. Oh my God, I'm blanking on the name of the German Chancellor. Please,
Merkel.
That's right, Angela Merkel.
Merkel's not doing another term.
It's not doing another term,
right?
So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. So, and for that matter, go to 2024. If you think about the politics of this, Biden will be, he'll be in his 80s then. So the chances of him running again. Sorry?
He'll be 82 years old.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the chances of, assuming he lives till then, right? Which, I mean, he's seems to be a fit and healthy guy when he's not playing excessively with his dog. The chances of him running again, which means we'll end up with two of, we'll go back to 2008 where we'll have, two massive primary fields on each side. And God knows what lunacy is going to be there.
But, the good news, that, and I think there is some, is that there is a lot of younger talent in both parties. And a lot of those folks, I mean, some of them may end up being hostage to, the Trump or the, whatever the analogy is on the left. But I think there is reason for hope that generation of, the Pete Buttigieg's and Amy Klobuchar's and Marco Rubio's and Ben Sass's, there's actually a lot of talent in that next layer of potential national politicians. And I think if, what is the thing that you say, no one's completely worthless, they can always serve as a bad example. I don't think any of those folks is going to want to repeat the Trump term. I don't think any of them is going to want to do what Trump did.
Right.
Yeah, I
Trump
think
wants to repeat the Trump
when
term.
I think of this, yeah, that's
Thinks
true.
he is repeating the Trump
When
term. Come on. Last night he said he was convinced he was going to win the election already.
Oh my goodness. I think we have to go back to what Grace said at the beginning about whether or not we're talking about the right topic with some of this, which is what are people's unmet needs? And I think we have this situation where people are just not getting what they need or what they think that they need or want from the government. And we need to really think about a different social contract, or we're going to have this totally chaotic system for a long time. And hopefully some of the really strong new voices that are coming in the mix will make some changes, but it's just fundamentally not working for a big portion of Americans.
I don't know how many of you saw, there was a marvelous article in the New York Times about a week ago that called attention to what Biden wants to do for caregivers. Not merely caregivers of older people, but people with kids at home that the daycare is disappearing or they can't afford it. If he's able to pull something like that off, that would make a difference for tens of millions of Americans that are really stuck right now, and they're really hurting because of COVID. Maybe that electoral thing that we were talking about a minute ago changes. It was a very encouraging, universal pre-K, dramatically increasing the cadre of daycare centers and providers, raising the rates paid to those folks so that they can recruit and expand. It was a very impressive, I read it. I went back into the campaign and looked at the document. It's really impressive stuff. And a lot of it is about public health and how to improve it. And I think if they can get past COVID, all the stuff we've been talking about, and get just a moment of clear air, there's a ton of good ideas in there that I think it would be very difficult for a lot of Republicans to vote against.
But for example, if we've exposed anything, we've exposed what a terrible job we do with unemployment insurance. It's totally Byzantine, all different in every state, insufficient. And yet where's the clarion call for a totally new way of thinking about unemployment insurance and doing that right? But instead, Republicans want to cut the benefits for people. So we're not taking advantage of the crisis, as I think Ian likes to talk about.
Well, we haven't mentioned it,
Similar.
but we still don't have a stimulus bill, and we still don't have, we still have the issue that we are defunding the police because we're defunding every state and city government by definition, right? We're defunding everything, and
they'd rather give $600 to wealthy people than to give more unemployment insurance to people that don't have jobs.
State and local governments have laid off 1 million people, and if what I think is going to happen with this non-existent V-shaped recovery, we're going to have an 80 million person Medicaid program, and states that aggressively took advantage of ACA to expand, like Oregon and California and a lot of these other places, are going to end up with 35 to 40% of their population on Medicaid and no way to fund it.
Right.
So this is actually, I mean, I think the people that are coming into office in January understand all this stuff. That's a big chunk of the aid to state and local governments is for Medicaid. And, you know, if we're pushing people off of Medicaid rolls that are rolling off of unemployment and those jobs in those small businesses aren't there, you know, we're going to hate ourselves. I mean, it's just, it's so obvious what we need to do.
Right. And Jeff, just to close the loop with where we started the conversation, you've got the squeeze on the other end for our provider friends who are going to probably see trimming of the excesses and the ability to keep commercial payment rates up. I just did a thing yesterday with Elizabeth Mitchell from Pacific Business Group on Health and Barry Arbuckle talking about value-based care and employers. But it just seems to me that that's a rock and a hard place, you know, permanent payment or payer mix impairment because of Medicaid expansion on the one hand, and the pressure on rates on the other. And then on the other side, the commercial sector not being a place you can just jack up prices. That squeezes providers big time going forward.
You know, the other thing is lurking here that no one's really talked about. You know, Biden is going to enter office with $1.8 trillion budget deficit before any COVID relief. So a $500 billion package puts that up into the $2.3 trillion deficit range. He's not going to have all that much money to play with to do any of the stuff that we've been talking about. And so unless there's a vigorous economic recovery that begins filling in some of that huge hole, he's going to have to look for things that don't cost him money to try and get benefits flowing through. And one of the things I know he's going to try to do, which he won't be able to do if they don't get the Senate, is to try to make it easier for workers, particularly healthcare workers, to organize and to increase the number of people that are in labor unions. So I think it's something that no one's watching right now. There's something called the PRO Act that's been sitting in Congress, Patty Murray's bill, that would kind of override the right to work laws and make it easier for unions to organize. It's going to sneak up on a lot of our provider friends. I don't think they're even looking at it. Kaiser, you know, we're going to see strikes against Providence, against, you know, the big university academic health centers. We're going to see an era of labor activism that's going to look a heck of a lot like the 30s and 40s in the next 2 to 3 years.
All right, so we're right up against our closing down. Let's do a real quick round the horn, and it's probably the last time you guys will get to this year. So, what do you? I don't know if you just want to wish each other happy Christmas, or you want to tell me what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks, maybe going up till the start of the year, and who's going to win the Georgia Senate race? Grace.
Well, I'm not touching that one, but I'm just going to keep positive and follow the research and science and the word coming out of the FDA on different vaccines. There was a report of inhaled vaccines showing promising results. So just keeping fingers and toes crossed in that arena. Right. And happy, merry everything to everyone, of course.
Kim.
I'm just hoping that the Supreme Court shuts down this Texas nonsense.
You're talking about the ACA one or the
actually,
one?
I was talking about the suit against the elections in other states.
Right.
There now 15 other states have joined to be part of.
That's insane, but to me that's kabuki theater. So, Raj.
I'm going to offer Hanukkah greetings to everyone for tonight, and then really, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about what are our schools going to do next year. That's a big unknown, not just for us as parents, but for our children.
Absolutely. Ian.
I think it might be a split decision in Georgia, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that in the UK, now that we've got William Shakespeare vaccinated, that Milton, Thackeray, and Dickens are next in line, right? So
is Pope not getting one?
Yeah, Pope. Yeah, well, we'll give...
maybe Tom Stoddart as well. I think he's still alive. Jen.
Well, I think this year has been just so fascinating in terms of all of the science and research and behavior change that's been going on. And and so forth. And I'm looking forward to a little bit of downtime over the holidays to catch up on some of the reading and all of the thoughtful commentary that's been going on these topics to guide us into next year, which is sure to be equally challenging and crazy. And I'll follow on Raj with happy Hanukkah and happy holidays to everybody.
Yes.
All right. Jeff.
Well, I think there's a wild card that's sitting out there that really could change a lot of this stuff, and that is a dramatic increase in affordable home testing for COVID. I think there's nothing that wouldn't be helped by a dramatic broadening of the ability to figure out if you're infected or not. I think that would really help us. I'm also hoping, maybe not in the next week or two, but in the first part of the new year, that we hear more about COVID therapeutics, not vaccines, but actually things that snuff out the illness. I haven't given up on that. And maybe it's a genetic flaw. I think we got our asses kicked in 2020 and probably needed a dose of humility in our country for what we haven't been able to do and what we ought to be able to do. And that 2021 will begin with a little bit more realism and thoughtfulness about our fellow Americans.
I certainly hope so. Well, I want to thank my my guests here. Put it up. Here we go. It's been a great conversation about with some realism. It was the December 10th edition of the THCB Gang. Kim Bellard, all the way from Cincinnati, Ohio. Grace Cordovano from New Jersey. Ian Morrison from Menlo Park, California. Jeff Goldsmith from the beautiful, you can see behind him the beautiful sights of Virginia. Raj Agrawal from Philadelphia, and Jen Benz from San Francisco. It's Matthew Holt from the nicely golden county of Marin County in California. Signing off. We'll be back next week with the last episode for the year, and I'll have a few special guests on talking for THCB Gang. Same time, next place, 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern on December the 17th. Look forward to talking to all of you then, and thanks for watching this so far.